that, we can just switch over and we can see him and hear him. Hey, what's up, Pascal?
Hey, what's up?
Yeah. Um, so,
Glad to be on.
yeah, awesome. We almost didn't get you on, and then last minute we were able to get you on, so that's exciting. Um,
Yeah.
so for anyone who doesn't know you, you do a little intro about yourself and who you are and kind of what you do, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, my name is Pascal Wiemers. I'm a freelancing CGI artist. I don't like pretty much a generalist at this point, I would say, because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find a category yet where I fit into perfectly, although I'm focusing in more on Houdini right now. And I started with Blender. Um, and yeah, I'm 23 years old, so I have not been doing this full time for so long. Full time
Mm-hmm.
freelance for about two, no, yeah, not long. It's going to be 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And before that, I did my traineeship at a media agency. So no, it was an ad agency in
Mm.
Hamburg. Just classical style advertising, billboards, couple TV ads, nothing too crazy. Just really, um, yeah, classical commercial, I would say, like
Yeah.
food brands, Kellogg's, Telecom,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. And the main reason why I did that instead of studying something more related to my field, I guess, was because I tried to get into some universities, but I then didn't get into it
Mm.
because my portfolio was not really specific to what they wanted to see. And I knew that, but I didn't really care too much at that
Mm.
point. I was a little bit arrogant at the time, I guess. Um, and there are not so many 3D VFX schools in Germany, at least no public ones. So there are
Mm.
private ones, but they cost some money. Didn't really want to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I only did the traineeship to get like I feel like to alleviate the internal pressure from my family to have something of
Yeah.
you know that certificate
Mm-hmm.
that says, oh, you're good at something, you can
Yeah.
do a job. I think I did that because of that reason and not really because I needed to. So I'm mostly self-taught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't know that you were only 23, and that's kind of crazy with all the amount of like work that you've put out and the quality of work. It's like pretty insane that
Oh,
that
thanks.
just had 2 years in. Um, yeah, so I think that it's interesting to get kind of a wide variety of people, and I feel like you fall a little bit closer to the stuff that I do. I mean, stylistically, maybe
Hmm.
you're a little bit more like cool and have more of that like
Yeah.
hype beast sort of like fashion. I don't know. Those seem to be like the cool stuff that you're able to like get your hands on, whereas mine's I feel like always very moody and dark and I don't know. I go a little bit more photorealism, but yours is like such a cool abstract version of what you do, and that's kind of why I followed you in the first place. Was like it was some stuff that I hadn't really seen people doing, and it was also in the space of like some cool, very well designed Houdini stuff, which I feel like is you either
Hmm.
get one side of it, which is like for film and that like is very technical, or you get the other side that's like a copy and paste in Tagma tutorial that someone's done, and you're like, oh well, we've seen that 1,000 times, but yours was like very
Yeah.
unique in the style, which was cool. I don't really remember how long ago it was that we started following each other, but it's just kind of like it's just been nice to
And I
see
think
like
we
what you've
started Houdini.
sort of the same time.
I
Yeah.
think we started Houdini at the same time, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So I was also quite excited when you were doing Houdini and posted one of your tutorials with the can with the
Mm,
spinning thing
yeah.
with the droplets. That was helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
I used to do tutorials, but they just took way too long, and so I've switched to just doing live
Yeah.
streams because then I don't have to edit anything. And it's just kind of
Yeah.
they get what
Totally.
they get. that that was one
Exactly.
of the questions from Instagram actually was someone was asking, will you start doing tutorials? So are those on your horizon of
I
things you
already
want
have
to do?
tutorials up. I already have some tutorials up
Oh,
on my YouTube channel. Two Houdini tutorials,
maybe they
like
want
two, three
more.
Blender tutorials. Yeah, yeah, I have to do some more. It's just every time I want to do a tutorial, I feel like there's information out there, and what am I
Right.
contributing? It feels like it's if you really want to present worthy content, you should have something of value to the audience, and not just like some um, lazy thing that isn't out there. And for me, it's quite hard to like say what can I bring to the table, which is unique or which
Right.
is good. Um, Maybe I set the bar too high for myself, and if I do something, it would be fine. But I think that's one of the barriers that keeps me from doing
Right.
more. But maybe I should just do it. I don't know.
Yeah, that was always one of my things for when I've given like 2 talks for Maxon, and they're always like, "What do you want to talk about?" And I'm just
Right.
like, I don't know. I feel like everyone's talked about like the interesting stuff. I don't really know what I can contribute
Yeah.
here. And same thing with tutorials is like, is this? I don't know. It worked for me, but this is probably the wrong way to do it. Is always what I think when I'm doing
Yeah.
something. I'm like, I'm
Exactly.
sure there's a proper way.
Exactly.
So I always like start the tutorial with like, this might not be right, but if you want to do it the exact way I did, kind of the same thing for my can tutorials. Like, I don't know, that like feature had only been out for like 2 days, and I was like, this is what I did to make it work, and everyone else. And I watched a
Yeah.
different tutorial where a guy did it totally different. I was like, oh, maybe that's the right way. I don't know. I guess it's always very subjective with like how to use the tools, but cool. So I posted your link in the chat, so if people want to go watch your 3 tutorials, they can watch those.
Yeah.
But you gonna do any more? Or you just focus on other stuff?
I think I'll do some more, but right now I'm trying to dive into Houdini a little bit more, and learning Houdini just always takes so much time.
Yeah.
Like getting down to the settings and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like really happy if just something really tiny works, but you're not
Yeah.
gonna get like you're not gonna get an artwork from that. It's just like,
Right.
oh, this technical thing
Mm-hmm.
works, and now I know that I can render this thing.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do with it? I don't know yet.
Yeah. Houdini is
So
weird in that sense. I feel like I started learning Houdini like 4 times. Like I would learn it, I would get
mm,
like maybe a month in, I would stop using it, and I would completely lose all of the information I had gained in that month. And then it took like 4 times of doing that, like kind of head first at it, and then eventually it like started to stick a little bit more. And that's the nice part is like as you remember stuff or make connections between how things work in the program, like it all kind of builds on itself. So it's like it gets easier
yeah,
the longer you do it, which is nice. Not and it kind of builds on itself, but it takes. I think it took me a good like year and a half to even get to the point where I was like making connections of like, oh, not just like pushing buttons and
yeah.
remembering how to do stuff and following tutorials like, you know, pause, do the thing, unpause, watch the tutorial, pause, do the thing. And so yeah, it's been it's a whole big beast to learn that software, but it's very nice when you can properly use it for what it's like good at and not have to do all these weird janky things inside of other programs like Blender or Cinema. I don't know. I don't really know Blender very well. I've opened it like twice, but that's where you started, was in Blender?
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I when I think I was 15 or 15, 16. Yeah, I think around that age. No, actually 14. 14 when I just downloaded a couple of CG software, and I was testing out all of them, but the one that stick was Blender. Like I didn't like
Hmm.
Cinema. It felt to me more like Photoshop. I just didn't like the
Hmm.
interface. And 3ds Max and Maya, they suck.
Yeah.
When it comes to the interface, like they're horrible, horrible, horrible pieces of software. I mean, on top, under the hood, it seems to be a really great thing,
Hmm.
really stable, I guess. Modo also, but I found
Hmm.
the viewport to be a little bit weird and wonky, and now nobody uses it anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like, have you seen somebody using Modo?
Not really.
It's
Not that
like
I can think
it's
of.
gone, right?
Yeah.
It's weird.
It's interesting that you thought Blender had a good UI because I feel like that's kind of in the early stages of Blender. That's what they were always hounded for, was that they have awful UI, but
Yeah,
it's a great program.
yeah. The thing is, it's very customizable,
Mm,
and it was always really quick to like readjust your windows, and
yeah.
if you know your keyboard shortcuts, it's like playing a piano, and they make sense.
Hmm.
Versus Cinema 4D, where the keyboard shortcuts are kind of random sometimes. Like I don't know, it
Yeah, it's
doesn't
it's
quite
uh
make
it's an
sense often,
interesting
right?
flow that they have where it's like the shortcuts are like broken up into grouped windows. So like, if you click
Mm,
N, N unlocks a certain amount of other things you have to click after N to get to a
yeah.
different tool versus, like, which I guess allows them to have a ton of things hotkeyable. You just kind of have to like muscle memory know like double hit
Mm,
this, hit that, double hit this, don't hit that. This one will get you this one sometimes, but then other times will get you this one. It's just like, oh, I mean, the one thing I did
uh,
like about theirs was always like a Shift C to search anything is always what I just like defaulted to. So I never really went into any
mm,
of the windows. I was just like always Shift Seeing, searching stuff, entering, and then like that would get you tools, it would get you objects, it would it would do almost everything for you. But yeah, that took a bit for me to like remember that workflow. But yeah, Blender also being free, probably great for someone who's 14 who doesn't, I mean, it's either pirate things
Yeah,
or get free open source software. So you went with the ethical
exactly.
route of using open source software.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Also, one thing that I really found really nice. At the time, they didn't have cycles yet, so there was only
Mm.
Blender internal, and which was not that great. Like you can do some really good stuff, but there's a lot of tweaking you have to do with it. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like Cycles is more like Octane, I guess,
Yeah.
since it's like an unbiased path tracer. Um, yeah, but I really like Blender, and it's really quick to model in. And right now, it's like the undisputed king for modeling,
Mm.
hands down.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I mean, you should try it once
I opened
with
it and I like well what really got me interested was I'm forgetting his name. Ian, whatever his last name, who does
Ian
those.
Hubert.
Yeah, Ian Huber. I watched the talk that
Yeah,
he
he's
gave
great.
where like he
Oh,
was just like he makes it sound effortless and I was like, wow, maybe I should really
yeah,
check this out, especially with like Eve and all that stuff. And it's always been in the back of my mind like eventually that stuff, because it's open source, it will eventually ride to the top, and like getting funding by all these places makes it even more of a fact.
Facebook is
Yeah,
funding it now.
it's gonna stay around. Before that, I was like, I don't know, it's not industry standard, no one's using it, so I mean, like, there's like this little crowd that uses it and says it's great, but now it seems to be really like pushing in on being industry standard for a lot of things. So I was like, I should open it. Also, their the grease pencil stuff that I saw someone using was
Yeah,
like really cool for concepting. I was like, that's amazing. Opened it, and like, I don't know, it's just always uncomfortable getting in a new program and like
yeah,
figuring out where
feels
things
weird.
are, opening all the drawers and being like, what's in here? Oh, that's so okay,
Yeah,
that's different. I tried to lay it out similar to my cinema setup so that all the hotkeys were the same. That helped a little bit, but it was rough to reassort all of that. But yeah, eventually it's on my dock in the lower hand, or on the toolbar right next to cinema, but I never open it because work never asks me to open it. I just use cinema for work, and then Houdini is like the other part of my brain right now where I'm like
yeah,
getting more into that, and Blender is just way in the background.
yeah. I mean, like Cinema is an amazing piece of software. If you're doing motion graphic, it's
Mm-hmm.
perfect for that. And if you use it with Houdini, it's like perfect combination
Yeah.
of the two worlds. It's great.
Yeah, it kind of covered that's
And
where I feel like all my bases are covered. Whereas like Blender is nice for like all these other things people have found uses for it, but I'm like, I just don't need those uses. They're really cool though.
yeah,
It's like great and groundbreaking in different areas, like modeling especially, and like all of the hard surface modeling stuff and organic different things that they have, and the fact that people can really just port tools into it and make it better like by themselves is amazing. And then it's like you don't have to wait for a whole big like new release of the software. It kind of just always is getting better with whatever any updates people are doing to it with their little like plugins. um but yeah, just never really gotten into it. So you started in Blender when you were like 14, and then um is Blender and Houdini, are those the only two things that you use like professionally on your freelance, or did you finally get into cinema and eventually start using that stuff?
oh, I try to get into Cinema, but I just don't like the program. Like maybe if I force myself.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know why. I just don't like the UI for some
Mm.
reason. I just feel uncomfortable. Um,
So you use
and
Blender
I
then
don't know.
professionally on your freelance stuff?
Oh yeah, I've used
Oh,
it for
wow.
Nike jobs already. Yeah, yeah, a lot actually.
Hmm.
I mean, it works perfectly.
Yeah.
Cycles is really good. Like, I wouldn't recommend it for really large scenes though.
Hmm.
Like, because if you have you ever used the Redshift proxies?
Yep.
Like, if you load that directly from disk, it's just unbelievably fast. It's stupid.
Hmm.
So I don't think you would get those speeds with Blender. I
Hmm.
would have to test that out. But Redshift is just way better as a production renderer for sure.
Yeah.
Like it's cleaner, it's quicker, and more customizable. But it's doable. And other than that, yeah, the standard stuff like I don't know, Quixel, After Effects,
Yeah.
DaVinci Resolve, Fusion 360 sometimes, but not that often. ZBrush, um, yeah, yeah, this the standard
Yeah.
stuff that you have to use from day to day.
Yeah.
Kinda.
So what kind of got
Uh,
you into doing this? I mean, if you were playing around with it when you were like 14, that's like, before you were thinking about it as a career, or you were just always wanted to kind of get into that kind of stuff.
mm, well, um, yeah, I started more with like I used to draw a lot as a kid, just
Mm-hmm.
scribbles, and with 12 I started photography. So I did a lot of photography until I was like, I don't know, 18, 20. Right now I don't own a camera, so I'm trying to look for one to buy right now. So yeah, I started with photography and then I loaded up Photoshop, and then with Photoshop you kind of branch out and see what's possible, and then I was just looking at 3D software, so and video editing software, so it was like branching out from those places.
Mm-hmm.
And at a certain point I was thinking maybe I'll be a photographer, and then I saw those, those shops where they take family portraits. I don't
Yeah.
know, it felt so soul crushing when I saw those, so I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And um, I was always thinking, what can I do professionally? And I always knew I wanted to do something with images.
Mm-hmm.
Was not quite sure what. Like right now, I'm still quite interested in doing film. Um, So yeah, it was always like a development. I always just follow what is interesting to me at the moment, and 3D kind of worked for me.
Yeah.
And I think you can make a really good living right now with 3D, which is really great. Like the photography is harder to get a good living out of, I think, right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to be at the top, I
Right.
guess. I think.
I
I'm
assume.
not quite
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, and with
Or
graphic
move
design,
somewhere
it's
where
all,
like that's the 1% and you can, work. It's a lot
yeah,
harder to freelance as
yeah,
a photographer and stay local.
yeah, exactly. And that's the great thing about 3D. Like it's a one-man show versus, for example, film. I also wanted to do film for a long time, but just the notion of having to rely on like a huge team, and without that team, nothing is gonna get done. Just didn't feel that right. Like I guess I'm also kind of a not a control freak, but I like to be in control of
Mm-hmm.
my life and what I want to do. That's why I'm also freelancing. And yeah, 3D just gives you that opportunity to be free in your own personal expression, in your work lifestyle. You can work from 3 to like 5 a.m. in the morning and nobody will care unless you have a deadline. So that's
Yeah.
something I really value. Um, and you can always branch out. So that's what I always like. Like if you want to do VFX, you can get back into cameras. If you want to do photography, you can combine that with mixing CGI stuff, and it like combines the best of both worlds, like technical and artistic. You can
Mm-hmm.
dive into both of these, so it doesn't get boring for me. Otherwise, I don't know. I'm not like that artistic flower child. I'm also a little bit technical.
Yeah.
So
That
yeah,
was kind of my similar path too. I think we actually had very similar things where it's like, yeah, it's,
cool.
I drew as a child and like I liked, when I got into Photoshop, that was cool. And from Photoshop, I got into like After Effects. And then After Effects, I got into 3D. So it's like just this weird chain where it's like, I liked all those things, but, doing After Effects 2D stuff like for my day job sounded like awful. And I was like, ugh, there's some more
I
interesting
tried
stuff
it.
somewhere else. And I was like, okay, I like this. I shot video because I think everyone that does 3D, starts at video or something or starts with photos. And I was like, this is great, but like, yeah, kind of what you're saying, either to get to the level of like, cinematic quality I want, I have to have like hundreds of thousands of dollars to like get all the equipment, or like I need a
Mm,
team of people. And I was like, ugh. But in 3D, I can just
yeah,
build whatever I want and, film it that way. So I was like, oh, that's great. I'll just learn how to do that then. And then, once you get into 3D, there's like, it branches out even further into like what part of
yeah,
3D you want to do. And it's like, oh, I like to learn, so I want to try all of them. So, you get into a little bit of texturing, a little bit of
yeah,
modeling, and then you kind of figure out what you do and don't like. And I was like, I don't really like to model, but I, like to do stuff with the models. And it's like, I like to texture them, but, maybe more procedurally. And it's like, and then eventually kind of somewhere down the line, I found like, I like proceduralism and building systems that like, aren't, me going in somewhere and doing like the same thing all the time, or like can get applied to a bunch of stuff. And that's kind of where like Houdini was like, hey, this is, we built a thing that this is what it wants to do
Yeah.
the whole time. And you're like, awesome. And it makes great stuff.
It
And
just feels smart. It just
yeah,
feels like it makes
makes
sense.
you feel like a
Like you should do
scientist where you're
this.
like, you're
Yeah.
inventing stuff on the fly from way smarter
I'm
people.
amazing.
Yeah.
Snapping cubes.
Right, yeah, building out big node trees that look impressive until you realize it's just like a couple simple operations done over and over and over. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's funny. That's very similar. And then I went more of the route of I like was like, oh, studios are cool because you get to kind of get the miniature version of like what a film VFX house is, but not at the part where you're like you're just doing one little section over and over and waiting to give it to somebody else. You can kind of touch more things, but then after that, going staff at a film studio is, you have to do whatever that studio's work can get in. You don't really get to, branch out into other veins of work. And that's where freelance was like, you get to work everywhere if you want to. You get to stay as long as you want to, and leave if it starts getting boring, which is, I think, very enticing for a lot of people in our industry, where it's like, this is my sixth phone commercial. Maybe I don't want to do phone commercials anymore, and I want to go do something else. And but if you're at a place that just gets phone commercials, it's kind of all you're gonna do. So freelance is nice, where you can like go shop around, only with the downside of like maybe you don't get work for a little bit, so you gotta kind of manage that minefield all on its own. But you've been freelance for 2 years, and you've been liking it. Have you ever been staff somewhere?
Um, no, not really.
Hmm.
Like I did my traineeship, and my traineeship was basically like a job.
Right.
There was every couple of months they had some school lessons in a separate, yeah, in a school.
Hmm.
But I had to come back and work after that, so it was basically just me and yeah, relying on my own skills to make it work, which was daunting. Um, but yeah, I've never been employed for 3D, which is interesting, and it feels kind of weird. But it's working out so far. It always feels a little bit it always feels unstable
Yeah.
because you always work with different clients and you're always switching, and so that's the only downside, I guess. You just don't feel secure in your life to make certain decisions. At least I do. I don't feel really secure right now. Um, Although I don't really have money problems, but it's can develop really quickly, I guess.
Right.
You never
Yeah.
know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's when someone asks you something like 6 months from now, and you're like, I don't know,
I don't
maybe
know.
I could possibly be free then, but I could also have to keep working on a gig because I need to make sure I can
Yeah,
do stuff for other stuff. Yeah, it's a little hard to plan like in long term.
finding vacation time,
Yeah,
it's
I
really
mean
hard.
this
Really,
year,
really hard.
especially other than just like the pandemic affecting everything for a lot of people. I feel like I didn't take any vacation this year just due to the fact like I just wanted to, if they
Mm,
asked to rebook, I was like, yep, sure, let's rebook, and I'll just take vacations
yeah,
some other time as long as like I can keep this like ball rolling, because it's kind of easy if you're just getting your gigs renewed, but like as soon as you stop that and have to like start that ball up again, it's like a lot more annoying, and like then you get in that panic of like, oh, what if I don't get work for like 2 months? What if I don't get work for 4 months? And you're just like,
yeah.
oh, this is not the fun
What
part
if
of
I'm not good
freelance.
enough anymore? God,
Yeah,
what if I'm
yeah.
never gonna get hired?
Yeah, it's so easy when
Then
you're
that
like
spirals.
currently being hired, but as soon as you stop getting that work, you're like, oh my gosh, do I have to like learn something new? Do I have to like keep and then you're like emailing producers and annoying everybody to see if anyone has anything open, and then as soon as you get one, it's like calm again. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
that's the headache of being freelance. But at the same time, anytime you're on a gig where you're like, this is becoming awful, you can next time they ask to book you, you just be like, sorry, no,
it's like,
and then you just get
yeah.
to leave, and that's the
I know a
joy.
couple guys,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, that's the joy of it.
that's a fun part. Yeah, that's a really good thing. Plus, you can control your own workspace and what software you work in usually, unless
Mm.
you're working with the studio, which like requires you to do that. But then again, you might just hire someone else, not you. So
Yeah, have
yeah,
you
it's
so
great.
you've been remote like freelancing like the whole time you're freelance. You've never had to like go into a studio and work like at a desk inside a studio as a freelancer?
Um, I had kind of like a studio with some other guys, but that fell apart. So I
Oh,
went
is
there
that
to
the
work.
It's a Salem.
Celamix, yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It fell apart really in a bad way. It wasn't really nice.
mm.
Some a lot of good memories, but there was some shit going on with it, which wasn't really that cool. Which I also don't really want to get into because it's kind of nasty at some points.
Yeah. I just remembered that like there was like a little point where like a lot of people had like SX in front of their names, and it was like a
Yeah.
signifier that they were part of your like that group, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And like I
hmm
had started following a lot of them just because like I would look for people with that, and it's like you all had a very sort of similar and unique style and like what kind of work that a lot of you did. And then I think I saw like very glimpses of like, hey, this isn't a thing, we're not a part of this anymore. And
Yeah,
like
yeah.
people switched their names. I was like, oh, weird, okay. But so you, for like other places, like because that was kind of a thing that you had built, like a little place for like freelancers to go, but like you've never had to like as like a place like go into a studio and sit at a desk. Yeah, that's kind of nice. Yeah, that's kind
No.
of the mix here in New York, is that like most of the time, unless I'm working with a place that's outside of New York, you have to go in and like get used to working in that new studio and get used to their equipment. But being remote now, because everyone's remote, it's been great to like build out my own home like office and have my machine and the stuff where I need it, and it's like easier to work fast because like I can just, it's my machine versus getting like I was feeling comfy on like other people's
Yeah.
computers. You're just like, I don't know where stuff is and like the settings aren't right, so
It's not
it's a lot
home. This is
easier.
not
Yeah.
home.
Yeah, that's true. Feels it's like walking in someone else's apartment and you're just like, where's the stuff that I need?
Like, should I take my shoes off or
Yeah,
not? And
yeah, I
where
do.
are the kitchen knives? I don't know.
Yeah, it's just a lot easier to work on your own computer. So you weren't really work like wise. You didn't really have to switch up much from the pandemic. I mean, because you were remote the whole way, so that's a little bit easier for you. Everyone else kind of having to switch to remote. I've heard a lot of people like are it's hard doing just web chats as meetings and stuff, and like getting used to all
Mm.
that. But you've already been used to all of that with all your clients, so that's pretty easy for you.
Yeah, there was always like nothing really changed for me. Actually, not even my lifestyle feels the same way.
So,
Not
in
really.
like your freelance work, would you say that you're probably like a specialist, or would you say you're still more of a generalist?
Good, good question. Like, I still feel like I'm more of a generalist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm trying to dive into more technical stuff. So people usually ask me more if there's a problem to solve. I guess more.
Mm.
Like, that's getting more, but it's still at the start. And I think that's also something where I want to get into more because it's like kind of building out your niche.
Yeah.
And those technical problems are kind of enticing. It's always exciting when someone names something. It's like, oh yeah, maybe I
Mm-hmm.
could solve this. I don't know, but
Yeah.
seems fun. Seems like a fun problem. And like art directed stuff, it's always so temporary because the styles switch up
Mm-hmm.
quite often. I feel like
Right.
and that feels quite unstable to me. And yeah, like I said, I like stability, and then not really like the flower artistic kind of guy. So building my skill set on something where I can like consistently get work in the future uh, feels good. Even though like with the AI stuff that's coming up, I'm also kind of doubting that in the really long run. But
Yeah.
if you've seen GPT-3 or whatever, yeah, I think it's called GPT-3. That model seems just pretty scary looking. It's like it's a machine learning algorithm that combines a lot of things into one. So it can like write code, it can read code, it can create images, it can make web pages, it can create content. So it's everything in one
Awesome.
code. And it has already put up there has already been content created with it, like newspaper articles, and people fell for it.
Wow.
So that's kind of creepy. Like, just imagine web developers
Yeah.
getting out of the job because some guy just downloads GPT-3 and just says like, "Oh yeah, I want a news website that looks like this, and I want another content website that looks like this. Please generate the code. Maybe I want the button like this, and can you fill it up with content? Yeah, that would be great." And then just
Yeah.
walks away from the PC, and that's it.
Yeah. It's
And I think that's going to be the future in like 20 years for sure.
yeah, everyone being
Like
their
at least
own
for
art
some stuff.
directors. Yeah, I think is I mean it's
hmm
always a a reason when you're learning stuff or learning new skills is like never learn like buttons to press or like things that can quickly get outdated. Obviously not as
Yeah.
fast as like AI taking over, but like there was a big chunk of time I feel like where a lot of stuff was can you technically achieve this, and it's like there was an arms race to getting GPU rendering, like who knows Octane, and it's like you just need to know it, and then after a while everyone knows it, so that's not special anymore, and you had to move on to the next thing. So it's like always learn stuff that's more fundamental in like what you're
Yeah.
doing, and not button pressing, because eventually an AI robot will come by and take your job, I guess, is the lesson
Yeah.
there. But I mean, I'm always down for robots doing stuff that I don't want to do. So I mean,
Me
if
too.
I can have them, if I can just tell it to set up a scene the way I want and start like not have to go into the pyro settings and adjust all the little things that I want, I just like show it a reference of an explosion and it starts it, then like I'm much more down with that side of it. But it is a little
It would be
scary.
sick. Yeah.
It's a little
It is. It is. I
um
think Houdini will be actually perfect for that kind of stuff. If you're gonna use PDG and then combine that with a lot of algorithms and just
right.
layer everything on top. I think somebody already like did PDG with style transfer in Houdini,
Hmm.
which is interesting because then like it just means that if you can do that, you can also just use models for creating like 3D models and then models for creating textures and then just layer everything on top. And I don't know, I think they might be doing or going in that direction.
I saw
Of
that like side effects also had implemented, they'd shown in beta early stage of like you drew like a couple lines on like a box of like where you wanted like peaks and valleys, and it
the
did
terrain,
the
yeah, yeah.
terrain tool. So that would be really cool if you could kind of if you
Hmm.
drew a little mushroom cloud shape and it generated a I mean a lot harder, like a pyro explosion that like filled like that kind of shape. That would be
I
an
mean,
interesting like opportunity for them, because it looks like they're already going that route.
yeah.
And the same with all their other
I mean,
stuff is if it's all
yeah.
packaged and you can just go inside the layers and like actually affect everything, kind of the same way they'll package up like a DOP network into a little thing, and then you could always go inside and tweak it. That seems to be a great way that they're able to make artistic tools, like, or artist friendly tools at the top level in SOPs, and then you kind of jump in and you can do whatever you want inside of it if you're more technically inclined, is always a super nice wrapper, versus I feel like other programs kind of hide stuff away in little shells and you can't really like get into it, like any of the effectors in cinema or something, or little effects in After Effects. You can't really go in and change the inside code of it. You're kind of left with whatever they left exposed to you, which I've always like really loved about Houdini.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. And I think it's Houdini has the perfect building blocks to create everything basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because the system is really clear. You have access to the low level data, and you can build your system on top of that. And as an artist, even you can build your own systems and your own plugins. Like creating, for example, a snow plugin in Houdini would be extremely easy. But if you want to do that in Blender or Cinema, you would have to learn Python. Um, and that's like a really crazy good thing about Houdini. It's like I think I don't know who said it, but someone said that Houdini is more like an 3D operating system, and that's pretty
Mm.
true. Because you can build your own tools, you can build your own plugins, you can build your own uh, workflow, your own pipeline,
Yeah.
and in that regard, it's pretty future proof, I think.
Yeah, I mean that was always my reason to jump into it, other than like just that it was cool or it was making cool stuff. It seemed very future proof, and in the way that they were making updates, it seemed like they were always accommodating to new workflows, like in Solaris and USD. They're like moving towards that to become like a pretty nice wrapper for tons of other effects, and kind of making it a house that everything lives inside of, with all their implementations from like 18 to 18.5. So that's, it kind of seemed future proof, and it also kind of seemed a way to step into like feature film work, where it's like I was working in cinema, that's just not not used inside of feature film pipelines very much, like at all. And I didn't really want to like learn Maya or 3ds Max, because it seemed like I jumped in and they were awful
Yeah,
UI wise, and I just didn't want to like force myself through that torture. But Houdini wasn't too terrible, so it was a steep learning curve, but like the UI still kind of made sense when I jumped in, and the node structure was like amazing to work with. So it seemed like a more future-proof jump into other stuff than like the very limited MoGraphy kind of world that I was living in with just like After Effects and cinema. But yeah, it's been really cool. Have you jumped into other stuff like Substance or like Marvelous Designer or any of those? I mean, you said you did ZBrush and stuff, but you're
Oh yeah, I also use those. I also
hmm
use those at some point. Marvelous Designer for sure, and I just don't like the exporting for Marvelous for animations is just really bad, and
yeah,
it's like it works, but it's not the best tool for that. If you want to create stills or design clothes, it's perfect. But I'm not a cloth designer.
yeah,
I'm not a concept artist,
yeah,
so it's like whatever. And Substance Paint is really great. Love that software. I've always wanted to try Mari, but it costs a lot of money and it's also hard to get into it.
yeah,
And when you actually need like 20 UDIMs, which each 8K
yeah,
textures, Substance Painter does the job most of the
yeah.
time. So it's not really worth the investment at this point.
hmm
Um, and funny that you said that. Substance Design, I haven't used that for ages. Have you actually?
Um, every now and again to like tweak something. I haven't like sat down and like learned it enough to like build my own stuff. I'm just editing things that I pull down from like Substance Source or whatever to like get like a little
True.
thing that I need.
Mm.
It seems great, and it seems like the Houdini of texturing, but it's just like
Yeah.
so very niche in the way they like name stuff and like where things are or the weird workarounds you have to do certain things with. It's like I've just always been like,
Mm.
ugh, I forget how to do stuff in here. I just won't do it. But Painter seems a lot easier because you're just kind of very simple
Yeah.
layer workflow. You just have to know how to like unwrap your stuff and bring it in. But other than that, it was like super easy to get rolling with. But Designer was a little bit more of a like, oh, you name stuff like way different and have very weird names that like just so like I would try to search for stuff and like add nodes, but like they weren't named, you know, commonsensical
Yeah, and you have
names.
to just like Google everything.
Yeah.
I think at
So
some point I did like a bark texture and like a ground texture. Like I tried a couple of things out, but it didn't feel like a program that I would use day to day because it takes like, I don't know, 5 hours to build like a proper good looking photorealistic
mhm.
texture. And it's just not
Yeah.
worth your time if you're not a game artist.
Right.
Yeah, and for tweaking, I think it's perfect, like you said. Like you use it. That's, I guess, the best way to do
Right.
it.
I've also found
Yeah.
that like Mixer and Megascans are like a way faster workflow to like get things that I need
Mm,
out so that I can kind of, tweak the photo scans that they have and mix
that's
them
true.
together.
I should use that more often. Thanks for reminding me. Since like if you use I use mega scans all the time. It's so great. Like Quixel.
Yeah.
I mean everybody does nowadays,
hmm
but their tool set is just so great. And yeah, Mixer. I should try to install that.
Yeah, yeah, it's
That's
free and it's super, it's hard because you have to work on it like on a per object basis, but like yeah, I throw stuff in there all the time to like take a mud texture that they have and a rock texture and then put mud inside like the cracks of the rock, and now it's a whole new thing that no one can
mm,
really, or throw a couple noises on it so that no one can identify it like off the bat as like a Quixel, and then I just throw that
it's a quick
into
slasher.
yeah, yeah. So that's the only thing that you're fighting is when you use Quixel stuff, you have to
Yeah,
kind of hide the Quixel-ness of it inside your scene.
that's true.
I mean,
That's
for
so
a long
true.
time it was like kind of like you just chuck a couple of their assets in and like you made a forest, and I feel like it's become less cool now. So you have to like figure out new ways to use them where like the cool part isn't the fact that it's like their assets. It's like you used
Yeah,
them in a
exactly.
cooler
It's
way.
just like it's like if you have an effect and you want to show that off, then build a
Mhm.
Quixel environment around that. But then it's about the effect, not
Right.
about the environment. It's like
Yeah.
just given at this point.
Yeah.
Um, oh yeah, but if you use that Megascans mixer, you save it into Bridge and then you can export it from Bridge again.
Mhm.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so
And
then
it,
it can
it
do the
auto
quick export.
creates
Yeah.
the preview of it too.
Mhm.
Oh, oh, that's sick.
Yeah.
I didn't try that
It's
for
a
some
it's a
reason.
weird plug, but I have a YouTube talk that I did
Hmm,
for
nice.
Maxon that goes over the whole workflow that I use. So
Oh,
I can put it in the
oh damn.
chat.
Then I have
Yeah.
to watch that.
Yeah, it was It was like
That's
a
gonna be good.
workflow I had built for a personal project where I was like, wow, this is actually like great because I can make custom textures for stuff and only do it once, and then because it's kind of procedurally
Save in
applied.
your library.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's a
that's sick.
nice.
What's that video called?
If you search Isaac Taracks Isaac Taracks Maxon, that should get, yeah, it's the second one down. It's for the 3D motion design tour. Um, my other talk is about like beer renders and stuff, but this talk is all about Quixel.
There, yeah. Sick. 1 hour of content.
Yeah,
So
almost 1 hour
that's good.
exactly. Yeah,
Oh, great.
this was
Okay.
a pre-recorded one where like they had us do it kind of
Oh, my
recorded.
headphones are
Oh,
switching to Linux for some reason. Just a sec. Uh,
oh no.
just a sec. My headphones are switching.
Oh, are they Bluetooth? Yeah, that might be why. Oh no.
Got it.
Okay. All good. You can hear.
Got it. Yeah.
Are they like Bluetooth and they switched over to like a different thing?
Yeah, they switched
Mm.
over to the PC. It's always a little bit annoying when that happens.
Oh, good. But yeah, that talk
Yeah.
goes over importing, exporting. The other thing I use a lot from there is the level of detail exporter for any of the assets that like you can
Mm,
feed in and like use it inside your scene. So inside of cinema, like if you scatter rocks everywhere and they're far away from the camera, they'll be like the low poly, and as they get closer, they'll be the high poly. It's like a
mm.
really nice tool. But I'm sure there's other because the export to Blender is they export just fine.
Oh, yeah, they do. They
Hmm.
do. I didn't like. I mostly use it with Houdini these days. I'm switching more over to Houdini for scene building and stuff
Hmm.
nowadays.
Yeah.
Like I usually only model and like um, edit some meshes in Blender or really simple scenes, not that complex scenes. I like to do in
Hmm.
Blender.
And there's a pretty good bridge. I watched a talk from uh, Quixel stuff into Houdini. Like there's like a cool scatter that like they have and everything
Yeah.
that like is like super smart. I have yet to use it, but I'm getting a little more comfortable building full scenes inside of Houdini. But like most of the time, I'll build like the scene in Cinema, send the one thing over that I need to do something on, and I'll
Yeah.
do it inside of Houdini and re-export it back with like a Redshift proxy or like a Alembic file, and that's normally my workflow. But it is easier just to render inside of Houdini because then you get all the attributes and stuff to play with. But
Yeah.
it's
So
still a
fun.
little uncomfy for me because it's like a little different than the rendering side of other programs. Like Cinema's great at rendering stuff out.
Yeah,
It's just
cinema is great with the batching too. Like
right.
you have a great render queue, and
Mm-hmm.
the render queue in Houdini is not that great
Yeah.
compared to cinema, I think, or not that easy to use at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that like everything in Houdini is great. It's just like you kind of have to like learn how to use it, and then you're like, oh, cool, now it is easy to use. But like in production on the fly, it's like you just have to use whatever you're comfortable with,
Yeah, I
which is
think
a
Houdini is like it's probably more like a tool for people who work at the studio and have a pipeline that's
right.
quite rigid, and you build that pipeline for one show, and then
Mm-hmm.
everything works smoothly and perfectly because that those three TDs at the beginning of the project set everything up, and the artist didn't have to do anything.
Right.
And cinema is like perfect for those jobs where you hop onto all different jobs and it just works for everything,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of jealous of people using cinema because sometimes you're struggling with the most stupid problems in Houdini,
I know,
and
like
people in
cloners
cinema
and
would
stuff.
never have
Yeah.
that. Yeah, you would never have that. And it's like, oh, damn, now I have to like calculate the matrices of these
Mm-hmm.
things, and how do you even do that? And what are quaternions? I don't even
No.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's there's
it gets stupid.
I also I always feel like stupid when I'm like doing something and I'm like I
Mm,
know Houdini can do it, like, but in Cinema it's like literally two
one
buttons.
click.
Yeah, it's like it's two
Yeah,
things and it does it perfectly. But in I have to like run something through a like a for loop to like be able to. activate something on every single primitive, and I'm just like, why is it so? I mean, it's like great. It's great that it is, this granular, but oh my gosh, I wish there
Yeah.
was like a container. And I think, eventually there was the Entagma guys made mops, which
Mops
was
is really great. Yeah.
I always forget to install it when I get a new version. So then I go
I
like
also have to still install it
2
now.
months without using it, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, this is actually so helpful. But yeah, I always forget to. And
Same.
theirs is a great bridge. There's other little things it doesn't cover sometimes where you're just like, this is stupid that I have to build it this way to do that very simple
Yeah.
task. But it's always worth it in the long run when like you need to do something else on that shot and you've already built a pretty good pipeline and you can access everything. Whereas if you had built it in cinema, you'd have to, do some wonky stuff to be able to do what you want with it. And that's always my favorite part about Houdini was like, it's going to be a little bit of an investment, mentally to learn this. But like in cinema, if I want to have particles on something, got to have X particles. If I want to then, have it do a cool like liquid sim, I could use X particles or I'd get real flow. And then if I want that sim to, emit smoke, it's like, I could probably use, X particles again, or I could use like, turbulence FD. It's like I have like 18 plugins now that I need for this program to cover all my bases, or I could just learn Houdini and do all of it all in one
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah.
And character stuff now and like cloth stuff. It's like it's just such a easier one place to learn everything, and it kind of covers your bases versus like learning 16 different plugins for everything else. And that's kind of my justification when I was like, this seems awful to learn, and it's so hard to like get into, but once you do, it's like it pays off for itself. And it's also really cheap for indie, like just to learn it and use
Yeah.
it. It's like
It's crazy cheap.
insane. Yeah.
I mean, you can use indie professionally. Like, I don't, maybe you are earning already more than 100,000 in because of the New York prices, but I'm not, so
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
gray area over here because it's either like 100,000 for you or like the place you work at. So every place I work at is like over that threshold. So it's like, can't use it like that. But then I can
yeah.
use it to learn on myself and like on small stuff for
Hmm.
myself, and then just make sure the place has an effects license, and it's easier, and just
Mm.
make them have it. And
Yeah,
eventually
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure eventually I'll have to buy one and bite the bullet on that because those are actually quite expensive. But so far so good. And you can learn for free with
Yeah.
the non-commercial. It's like totally open as well. It's just I think you can't export anything from it if you were like trying to work
No,
inside of cinema.
you can export, but no sequences. So you can export
Mm.
stills and still
Oh,
geometry. Yeah, still geometry you can export, but no alembic sequences or FBX sequences.
oh,
So
well,
that's cool.
yeah, that's
That's really
that's
good.
interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if anyone's interested in watching this and wants to pick it up, it's very accessible. They do a really good job of organizing, tutorials on their like little learn tab at side effects. And they rank them from like beginner to expert and different versions because
Ooh.
some stuff changes, and that's where I normally go other than like just searching in
Ah,
YouTube or Vimeo. they
okay.
they they also have like courses that they'll bundle, and pay
Ooh.
they I think they like hire people to like make some courses for them if like a new thing comes out, like a new update like Vellum or something. They had people make those. And Tagma is
Yeah, then tag
obviously
my
a
guys.
big part of where everyone dips their toe into Houdini is through Intagma, which is kind of amazing that they've made such a great resource that like I think everyone for After Effects it was like Video Copilot got them into it. For like cinema at least it was Grayscale
Yeah, yeah,
Gorilla, and for Houdini it's Intagma
yeah.
guys. So it's funny that there's always those
It,
one people that like do that
it's a meme
for
at this point.
yeah. It's
Andrew Kramer back with
yeah.
another
Hey,
tutorial.
hey, what's up guys, it's me, Andrew Kramer. So
Oh
funny.
God, love
Um, cool. So I think that we could go into some of the other questions. One that I like to ask people a lot is, as we're always working and you do personal projects and you do client projects, like what kind of kicks you into a creative flow if you're like not really feeling it, or if you're like feeling burnt out? Any like tips for people that are, also maybe feeling a little non-inspired on their work, but still kind of, for your day job you got to do it anyways, but for their personal projects and
it.
stuff, is there anything you specifically do that kind of helps you get out of a rut?
Mm. Well, I had a rut. Like I took a month off a month ago. Yeah, so yeah, I was getting to the point of being burnt out, and work was not feeling good anymore. Like you're sitting in front of a project,
Yeah.
it's a paid gig, and you just don't feel it. You just don't feel motivated, and you just can't get yourself to work another hour. It's really, really hard. Just take some time off and
Yeah.
just not touch the computer for a while. Go on a hike,
Yeah.
talk with friends, drink a beer or a couple, watch a movie, all those things that life has to offer. I think just do that.
Yeah.
And otherwise, like I get inspiration from movies, from listening or like, reading books or listening to audiobooks more these days. Yeah, I'm just do whatever feels right, I guess. And sometimes you also forget why you started in or started what you're doing. And I think sometimes you have to reconnect with those origins, with those roots again.
Right.
Like for example, for me it was photography and film, and I'm thinking about getting a Blackmagic, and I think that's gonna feel like really really refreshing to
Exciting,
hold
yeah.
that camera and just I'm excited again about something. And then like recombine it. Like I think I'm gonna get that camera and then maybe try to track it and then put some
Right.
things in it and then get to learn the workflow. So it's like win-win-win.
Yeah.
You get into something new. You have you can justify your purchase of a way too expensive camera and gear.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I guess combination of those things, whatever feels right to you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's good advice. It's always, yeah, to kind of if you're burnt out, it's either, you've overexhausted your brain in a certain area, so you just kind of have to shake it up, and
Yeah.
that's either, removing yourself or investing yourself in something else. And I think that's a great thing is that like, yeah, the problem with doing this stuff as our day job is that like it burns you out in the spot that is also your creative outlet, which makes you not want to that makes you kind of not have a creative outlet anymore. So if you can kind of shift gears, like you're saying, like, I also got a camera recently,
Interesting.
and it was, it's a super cool thing because it's like, related to our field, and like you're saying, track some stuff in. It's like a little bit, different than what you would do in your day job maybe, and that would help like shake up a little bit more like inspiration, and then from there you'll get inspired to do something else. And it's like you're always learning stuff that will help you, but you're getting inspired to do stuff from different areas, which I think is the best way to keep you from being burnt out is to like just brain stimulation in different areas versus the same monotonous thing that maybe you've been doing for your paid gig for a bit. So yeah, I think that's really really good advice. Is there any, what do you have as like an Everest dream project that you want to work on? What is something that, like, if you could pick anything, is it like a client that you'd want to work with? I mean, you've worked with some crazy cool clients, so maybe not one of those, but is there like maybe a bigger project, feature film maybe, that you'd want to work on?
Oh yeah, feature film I would really like to do at some point. Like ultimately directing would be fun, I think, because I really like team building and also like delegating work. That's also a lot of fun for me. And especially if you know the technical in and outs of what you're doing,
Right.
it's a lot of fun because then you can also talk and have an in-depth conversation with all your vendors or all your
Right.
collaborators. And I really enjoy that because you always learn something from them as
Yeah.
well. Like if you're working with someone on a team and you just have to communicate to them what they have to do, but at the same time you have to ask questions so you know how long it will take them or whatever. And I think that's really, really enticing. So I guess like directing a feature film would be like the Mount Everest thing,
Yeah.
but it's not something I have written down somewhere. It's just like, might be nice.
Right.
Just keep that in mind, like right at the back of my head.
Yeah.
Otherwise than that, just keep doing what I like doing.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's the only real huge goal I think I would have.
Cool. Yeah. There any upcoming projects, personal or client projects that are coming out that people should look forward from you, or anything that you wanna kind of promote?
Oh, um, yeah, a Beats campaign we've just dropped, and I didn't post it yet on my account. So yeah, that's something to look forward to.
Cool.
I guess I have a procedural nacho animation, like the nacho's procedural,
Mm.
and a friend of mine did the sound, and I didn't post that yet. I still have to ask him to send me the finished sound file, which is really fun because yeah, it's just a weird thing. Um, and yeah, right now I'm just looking into like the Rebel Way courses. Have you checked those out?
Yeah, they've
Just
been on
looking into
my
those.
on
Yeah,
my
those
sites.
particle effects. So I'm gonna try to like build a scene with one particle portal and do something funny with it. Let's see, and test some Quixel assets out that I didn't play with yet.
Yeah,
So yeah,
awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It was a pleasure to have you on and finally get to talk to you face to face. We've been following each other for a bit, so it's been cool to actually
yeah,
like get to meet you
that was really
and
cool.
talk. I hope that other people have got something out of this. This will be up on YouTube a week or two after right now that it's live. You can always check these out on Twitch. They will be recorded and up, then you can watch them there. But then they'll be up on YouTube if not. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this. And then I think that that's everything. So thank you everyone for stopping by. And have a good weekend. See ya.
Bye.